Welcome to the new episode of the Bro Science Podcast. We're back and we're coming strong with the most pessimistic episode of them all. And why do I say
Whoa,
that? Because
whoa.
yesterday,
Calm down, man. Calm down. Calm down.
yesterday I was reading up on Schopenhauer. Have you heard of him?
I think so.
Schopenhauer, the philosopher.
Yeah,
No, I
he's
haven't
like
heard of him.
he's said to be like the founder basically of the pessimism movement, or he's well known as a pessimist.
I'm just not going
He's
to
an
agree with anything, I reckon. Just straight off bat. I've not heard anything.
he's
Tell
an
me.
atheist. And he's very well known because he's explored the realms of boredom or and pain in a very like deep way, and it's something that other philosophers haven't done as much. Um, and your ideas aren't contrary to him if you are an optimist. In fact, I think you can't deny that we're all battling boredom and pain all the time. And since he's
What?
explored it, wait, you don't.
Go.
What I
Keep
mean,
going. Keep going. I'm just, no. You keep speaking.
like the absence of your energy, Chavi, is boredom and pain. That's, I believe, the best way to summarize
Yeah, so
what
like,
he.
yeah, so what he's saying is like the natural state without any extra being is boredom and pain.
Yeah, yeah, or that
This
he also
world.
says that pleasure is temporary and it fleets. It happens very fast, and then what you're left with is pain and more desire to for more things. Um, and I think you'd agree, Chavi, that you don't have infinite energy,
Yeah.
or are you talking that you're never bored, for example, or you're
But
never.
that doesn't, no. Okay, keep going.
No, that was a question for you.
So this like it's interesting. This guy's perspective is like maybe not the natural state. Maybe that's a bad way to describe it. But like this that we are fighting. So you're always going back to boredom and pain, and then you're trying to get away from it. That's because he's one like that's how I see his analogy without knowing much of what he's said. Like that, like the natural state or the normalness is the boredom and pain, and then you have to use energy, effort, or do things to get out of that to escape or to find new. But I just totally disagree with that. Totally. I'm like,
Why?
agreed that I don't have infinite energy. Agreed that I feel boredom and pain. But that doesn't mean that it's the natural state. No way. No way. Nor does that mean that pleasure and happiness is the natural state either. But like, I disagree that like it's like this, like I'm always trying to escape or like push past or like, yeah.
What do you think, Martin?
Then I think it requires further explanation on how he thinks that's true. Uh, but
Mm.
I do think there's some truth to that. I do think that it's true in the sense that maybe it's not that it's the natural state, but because we only understand the reality in the difference we see whenever we have some pleasure, anything that's not at least somehow similar pleasurable feels like pain. And the more pleasure we feel, the more pain we feel. And it's hard to recover that pleasure because if we stay in the same levels of pleasure all the time, then that same state of pleasure ends up becoming a pain. And that's why we need the highs and the lows. So also because we like the pleasure and we don't like the pain, we feel like the good part is the pleasure. So we try to walk away from the pain as much as we can, but as much we try to do that, we like push up the thresholds for pleasure to feel pleasurable, and pleasure starts becoming pain. So it's like you need to have both to feel pleasure. Otherwise, everything
Mm.
feels like pain. And because of that, you only feel pleasures sometimes if you have highs and lows. And because you have highs and lows, you only feel some highs, but all lows.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but I still disagree. Oh, I disagree with that too, actually. Like, I
Okay.
get what you're saying. Like, when you feel something, it's good, and then if you feel something greater, then that's better. And now, if you feel this, it's not as good. It's almost painful because this is now your goodness. But like, I think that's a bit of a separate topic to this. Is in like that's more of like like the more you know, the more you experience, the less you I don't know value other things. Like yeah, you should go. So like, and that touches into like minimalism, where like you should be minimalist and set your expectations lower so you feel better and all that kind of rubbish, right? But like when Santi's saying like you're going back to this like your natural state, or like you're always like life is suffering. It's that whole idea, right? That life is pain, like in like inherently painful, and that you have to produce effort or you have to do things to get away from that, or not to get away from it, to experience things, good happiness, whatever. Is that the idea?
But I don't think that's unrelated at all. And I think it just explains it because okay, let's say we're gonna I'm gonna start putting
It's just
some
the thing is, sorry to jump in though.
specific
It's just like
specific
we're
scenarios.
putting this too much in like a bolt, or like a like peace and like pleasure and like sadness are the only emotions. And this is where I was going to come in.
No, no,
Sorry,
no.
to say that like I completely disagree with this. I actually just think that life is an emotional experience. That's it, full stop. Not it's bad, feel better, or it's good, feel worse. It's just an emotional experience. And you perceive things through your emotions. How you feel about them is a totally different ballgame. Whether it's complete suffering your whole life, whether it's complete happiness your whole life, that's up to you. And that's up to your emotional state. To say that life is like you're gonna perceive things as suffering inherently is so like I think just stupid. Like, yeah,
I don't think it's stupid.
I
It
mean
might
it
not
is.
be 100% right, but I do think there's some truth to that. In the sense that if you do, let's say you enjoy a lot biking, but then you
Mm,
start biking all the time and you don't stop biking, then it starts to become boring. Especially if you do like the same route every day. So you need to
yeah.
keep like changing the things
Mm,
in order for them to stop being boring. And in a way, you could say that boring is super related to painful to pain
mm,
because boring usually feels like pain, and it feels so much that you usually don't want to feel bored at all, and you try to
mm,
do the most you can to not feel bored.
mm. See,
So
I
you
don't like
do need
these
to do
now. I just don't
changes.
like, it's just like it's so like it's so like pleasure, sadness, nothing in between. Like what about the feeling of peace? Where does that sit?
No, so that's why I said I don't think it's necessarily a complete philosophy of life, because there are
Yeah.
other things, but I don't think that's also completely false. I do think that if you were to not put effort, you would eventually feel a lot of boredom and pain, and you would not feel pleasure and
Whoa, I
what
don't
was the
know,
other one?
man. What about Taoism? The religion of Tao, or like no, it's not a religion, it's a way of life. Like people who almost strive to do nothing in this bid for peace, and like the less you do, the less effort like in that mind space, like the more peace you have. Like this
But
whole
I do think
boredom thing, I
peace.
think it's just a Western. I think it's just a Western view. It's very subjective. I think it's a Western view. Not saying that I
It's probably
disagree. I love
an
doing the shit,
accidental view, yeah.
but like, man, I'm not. I don't subscribe to it, or like, I don't think
It's
I
probably an
can.
accidental view because this is a German philosopher. But
Yeah.
if you think about it, I think peace is just you being able to live with the pain and the boredom, not that not being existent. I think it's you managing to live with it.
Mm,
Um, I've been trying to look up some sort of quote from him so that we can discuss on what he actually said. Because I paraphrased him. Um, Here, let me share screen. this is what we did in my uni time. In my uni, we had a first year of philosophy classes. We didn't read Schopenhauer, but what we did was have a quote, um, someone's like a philosopher's quote, and then we would discuss it in class, and it was incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I remember
It
doing this
was
in Copenhagen, man.
uh, in class.
Yeah, I had a class on this shit. It was so good. I got my lowest score I've ever got in a class though, so the
You got the best score.
lowest I've ever got.
Oh,
Mind you,
what?
I went to like three classes and I didn't do any of the study. So
Can you see my screen?
yeah,
Do you see the quote?
yeah.
Right. It says,
Okay.
"In boredom."
Do you want me to read it out?
Have you care to read it, please? Yeah.
Yeah. The most general survey shows us that the two foes of human happiness are pain and boredom. We may go further and say that in the degree in which we are fortunate enough to get away from the one, we approach the other. Okay, I get what he's saying now. Life presents, in fact, a more or less violent oscillation between the two. The reason of this is that each of these two poles stands in a double antagonism to the other, external or objective, and inner or subjective. Needy surroundings and poverty produce pain, while if a man is more than well off, he is bored. I actually really agree with what he's saying, by the way. Accordingly, while the lower classes are engaged in a ceaseless struggle with need, in other words, with pain, the upper carry on a constant and often desperate battle with boredom. The inner or subjective antagonism arises from the fact that, in the individual, susceptibility to pain varies inversely with susceptibility to boredom, because susceptibility is directly proportionate to mental power. Let me explain. A dull mind is, as a rule, associated with dull sensibilities, nerves with no stimulus can affect, or nerves which no stimulus can affect, a temperament, in short, which does not feel pain or anxiety very much, however great or terrible it may be. Now, intellectual dullness is at the bottom of the vacuity of the soul, which is stamped on so many faces, a state of mind which betrays itself by a constant and lively attention to all the trivial circumstances in the external world. This is the true source of boredom, a continual panting after excitement, in order to have a pretext for giving the number of people who gossip on the door. No, what? Giving the
The
mind
mind
spirits something to occupy them. The kind of things people choose for. How are we going to keep going? How long is this?
is not too long. Yeah.
Okay.
The
The
kind of
kind
things.
the kind of things people choose for this purpose shows that they are not very particular, as witness the miserable pastimes they have recourse to, and their ideas of social pleasure and conversation, or again, the number of people who gossip on the doorstep or gape out of the window. It is mainly because of this inner vacuity of soul that people go in quest of society, diversion, amusement, luxury of every sort, which lead many to extravagance and misery. Nothing is so good a protection against such misery as inward wealth, the wealth of the mind, because the greater it grows, the less room it leaves for boredom. Huh. The inexhaustible activity of thought, finding ever new material to work upon in the multifarious phenomena of self and nature, and able and ready to form new combinations of them. There you have something that invigorates the mind, and apart from moments of relaxation, sets it far above the reach of boredom. Interesting. Very cool.
Yeah, that's also what stuck to me the most, on what I read from him yesterday, and in that he says you can battle boredom by building
By
like
learning.
a powerful imagination. Yeah, learning.
Yeah.
Uh, it it's all in your head. You can you can literally think faster and like more interesting things, and then you'll have a happier life. And then that's a product of reading and learning and
Hmm.
being curious. And that's why. I was trying to say in the beginning that yeah, he's like a pessimist, but he because he's explored this topic so much, he
Mm,
also talks about how to battle those things. Um, and
very
he has a book.
interesting what he says. I like it. Mm. Mm, yep. Sorry,
It
keep going.
reminded
Something interrupted you. Yeah.
no worries. Yeah, it reminded me of my like the closest example I have of this right now is it's like my boss. Uh he doesn't stop like I bet it has pros and cons, but he's always on like the grind. He's always thinking about work. You can see it's like in his eyes. He's like he's sometimes just like at a 200% at, and I maybe that brings other problems with it, but I'm sure he's not bored. Like I'm sure he's not bored. Uh, if you get what I mean, and then this Schopenhauer has like this axiom or like this rule that it's boredom, don't relieve it, resist it. And then here's another quote: the power of imagination is the more active, the less external intuition is directed to us by the senses. Long solitude in prison or in a sick room, quiet twilight, and darkness are beneficial to its activity. Under the influence, it spontaneously begins its play. Oh, that's not the quote I wanted to read. Um,
So funny. It's so funny how like I don't know. You see like really like famous people or like people that like have done really well, right, in terms of like managing their journey or whatever it is. Like, and both of them like can tend to be on the extreme in boredom slash pain. Like, what's the other one? Boredom slash like going or
pain.
doing pain. Well, they're both types of pain, right? One's like bored, like sadness. You know, one's like doing too much. It's interesting. Like you got your David Gogginses, or like you got very extremely successful people who like who will grind, who like will work so hard, and I'm not entirely sure they love their life, but I'm sure some of them do. David Goggins doesn't, from what I know. He hates life. I think. I don't know much about him.
I
Might have
don't
looked
think
up.
that's true, man.
You know more. You know more. You know more. I don't. But I remember listening to his shit. He's like, man, I hate fucking breathing and I hate studying and but I do it anyways. I'm like, fuck me. You just hate like his motivation is hate. It's crazy. Anyway, I don't want to talk about David Goggins. This is not about him. That was just a wild example. You can use anyone else for this. But then you've got the other side of the spectrum, which like they go into complete boredom and like they do nothing and they meditate and they do all this, but they're also happy. And it's like so like is the key then to become familiar with both types of pain? And then like learn how to become its friend or learn how to welcome it? Like, what's the go? Like, do you have to escape one for the other, or is it like to welcome both? Maybe. Like, who knows?
He did say in the quote that we read that people that are more well off generally face more boredom than pain. What do you feel about? What do you think about that? What side of the spectrum do you think you're in?
Me.
Boredom or
What side of the spectrum do I think I'm in? As
yeah,
in,
like
which one do I resist the most?
yeah,
Boredom. Me. I'll definitely resist boredom the most. Yep.
yeah.
Oh, because I'm
Yeah.
go go go. But I love the idea of slowing down. I love it. I really, man. I've been saying it a couple times. It's coming up again. I want to become a monk, bro. Like I want to just quit everything and just go a monk for like 3 months. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
There's a book I've been wanting to read for a long time. It's called The Power of Boredom and Why We Need to Be Bored or something like that. Or why boredom is essential for life or something like that.
Wow. Man.
uh, Here, I want to read an. I found the quote I wanted to read. Listen carefully. There is, however, a genuine connection between boredom and creative thought. The mind of the genius, says Schopenhauer, is constantly active without further aim, and so becomes for him a steady flowing well of pleasure, such that boredom This persistent domestic demon of the ordinary cannot come near him. Intellectual activity drawn from richer inner resources is not the kind of activity that relieves boredom. It resists boredom. The active mind takes pleasure not in the turnover of desires, but in the act of thinking itself. I find that so interesting.
Yeah, so true. Like whenever I do, I stop thinking less about the million possible ways of doing those things. But whenever I start thinking about the million possible ways of doing something, I don't do.
Mm. Yep. That's funny. Like, yeah, also being in like the financial planning world, like a lot of our clients, like who are really rich, aren't necessarily that smart. They just do shit. Like they actually just like get it done, and they're not like scared to give things a go. Whereas people, I know a lot of smart people that like struggle for cash, struggle because they overthink everything. Everything has to be analyzed, and you can only move if it's the optimal move. And a lot of people miss out on good things in life because they're waiting for optimal, not for good, which is crazy.
Mm.
Yeah. I'd rather think.
An old boss used to say that perfect is the enemy of good.
Mm. Yep.
Good enough is the way to go.
Mm. Or great.
But that
I
also
like great.
that
I'm a
I
fan
like
of
great,
everything's amazing. Not perfect,
yeah, because
amazing.
good enough feels completion and like mediocre.
But for the context of the analogy, I know exactly what Santi's saying though.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I agree.
I said it because there's like 12 product principles. I've been learning a lot about product development and product management, and then I read 12 product principles the other day, and in the subject of delivery and building what actually creates value, one of the principles is good enough is better than perfect, which I thought which resonated with me really well.
I
Because you
agree.
can,
Yeah.
because
You
when
go,
we
son.
discuss a new feature for the product, we can be talking about it for days, and but if it's not in the hands of the customer, then it's not doing anything. So I think I like that for life. Like if you actually think good enough is better than perfect, you recognize that you'll be learning along the way. It incentivizes you to take action because you just take the hit, and then if you were wrong, you'll learn from it. If not, uh, you'll be fine. But you did everything in your power and in a timely manner, which was the bet like the most good enough you could get. And then I like that mentality because it means you're willing to learn from your mistakes, or you're open to the fact that you might be wrong.
Mm.
And the thing about perfection is that it would be ideal if perfection was ever actually to come, but it never does. So yeah, and a friend of mine always says, uh, what does he say? Well, I need to translate it. Nothing is perfect, but if something's perfect, then it's fake. And it's because sometimes we feel like some things are perfect, but usually when that happens, it's because we don't really have many angles on that thing, and we're missing out on many of the things that are actually making that look as perfect, even though it
Oh,
most likely isn't.
wow.
I like that.
And I think it relates to the thing we spoke last week, Santi, about how we see products that look like as they're perfect, but once you start working on them from the inside, you realize all the issues they have, and you realize they're not even close to perfect. When you're a
Mm.
customer or you're something from someone from the outside, you're missing so much information that they look as perfect.
Wow. It also got me thinking on the movie The Triangle of Sadness. Have you watched it? It's a couple like a couple models, like actual models that go on catwalks. Is that what they're called? Catwalks? Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
like for fashion events where
Mm.
they walk like on the stage. Get invited onto a cruise, which is full of rich people. It's filled with rich people. It's only rich people, and then there's the cruise staff, which have to make the trip on the cruise like the most perfect thing ever.
Mm.
And they even have like a Mr. Chile. What?
What?
And they even I think this movie goes perfectly well with the topic that we're discussing because there's even scenes of the cruise staff going like the beginning of the cruise has to be perfect and the end of the cruise has to be perfect because that's what people stick with. That's what the impression they're left with happens in the beginning and the end, and the from the beginning to the end could be horrible, but uh, those we need to execute the other two perfectly, and that shows like how they play with the minds of the rich in this case.
Mm.
To
Just to make them think that it was perfect, even though it probably wasn't. And I think the other thing that also we can get from that is that they say fake whatever you need to fake in order for them to think this is perfect.
yeah,
Mm. Just goes to show how valuable presentation is, or how valuable like how you put things together is, like the actual mechanics of the product or the thing that you're doing. Is it really as valuable as the perception of it?
So right now I'm reading an amazing book. I don't know if you know Matthew Dix. He's like one of the best
No.
storytellers in the planet, and he has this book called Storyworthy, and he tells about basically how to tell stories. Uh,
Yeah.
and he tells about how many people have great stories to tell, but tell them in a very poorly manner, or how you can turn like okay stories into great stories. And I think it just speaks
Right.
of the same about
What's it called? Sorry.
how
Can you send that to me?
story worthy story worthy. It's such a good book, and the thing I love the most is that it's a non-fiction book. Like you learn tons, but because he's a storyteller, he tells a lot of stories throughout the book, and it's so nice. So it feels so good. You want to keep reading all the time.
what it what is he
Wow.
what has he taught you, and do you believe he's a better like is he a good would you say
Uh,
his expertise also involves like fictional storytelling, or is it like focused on non-fiction storytelling?
he's fixed. He 100% like roots for you telling your own stories. He says that if you want to tell the story of a friend, don't unless you have some kind of participation in the story, and in that case, tell it from your perspective. And he shows examples of that. He also tells that, for example, Jurassic Park is not a story about dinosaurs, but he also tells you why the story has dinosaurs and why it's important for this story to have dinosaurs. But he fixates on the argument that Jurassic Park is basically the movie. I haven't watched it, but it's the movie about a guy who doesn't like kids, who in 5 seconds realizes he does love kids, and then everything else in the movie is just stakes in the story for you to feel more connected to the story. It's in a
I'd
way
love to,
that
man.
you
Share it.
okay.
Let's do it. Should we do it next podcast? Storytelling, the art of storytelling.
We can watch one now. It's like 6 minutes if you want.
I'd love
We
to.
can watch it. I'm down.
Okay, can someone else share the screen? I'll paste the link in the chat.
Santi, do you want to share the screen, man?
For sure. Oh, there it is. Studio chat. Oh, here it is. All right. Let me know if you can hear and listen. Mm.
So,
Yeah.
December 23rd, 1988. I'm 17 years old. I'm coming
Yeah.
to the record store. My friend Pat sees me. He asks me what's in the shopping bag I'm holding. I tell him it's a concert t-shirt. It's a Christmas present for Benji, our friend, and my best friend. Pat looks at me a little funny. And Pat's only 14 at the time, but he's already cooler than I will ever be in my entire life. So when he looks at me like that, I always pay attention. Pat tells me that guys don't buy Christmas presents for other guys, and especially surprise Christmas presents. He tells me that he's had girlfriends for like 6 months and never bought them a thing. So for me to buy Benji a Christmas present is a little odd. I'm suddenly feeling very self-conscious about the beta fish in the backseat of my car that I bought at the pet store for Pat like an hour ago, and the comic books for Coog, and the sweatshirt for Tom, and all the presents I bought for my friends. And I know that Pat is right, that it is strange that I've done this, but it's been a long time since I've had a good Christmas. My parents, my absentee, the combination of my absentee mother and my evil stepfather and their failing marriage and no money has made every Christmas for years just a misery. But for the first time in my life, I have money in my pocket. I'm a manager at McDonald's making $5.75 an hour. I'm working full time while I'm in high school, and I am the richest person I know. And so I am going to use this money to buy myself a great Christmas. I'm heading home now. I need to get my uniform because I have a shift at McDonald's later, and I got to get these presents into the house. It's starting to snow out. It's kind of lovely. I'm driving my mother's 1976 Datsun B210. It's a car about the size of a box of Pop-Tarts. I'm coming around a corner and I'm heading down a hill when my car starts to slide into the opposite lane. I look up and I see a white Mercedes-Benz coming right at me. They say that in moments like this, time will like freeze for them or slow down, and it is absolutely true. In the 3 seconds it takes before our two cars hit head on, I have exactly 3 thoughts. The first is, I'm not wearing my seatbelt. And I always wear my seatbelt. But in the excitement of buying Christmas presents and the rush to get home, I've forgotten on the worst day of my life to forget. My second thought is, in moments like this, I've been told to steer into the skid, but it occurs to me, I don't know what the hell that really means. And I still don't know to this day. And my third thought is just one sentence. It's 5 words long, and I say it aloud. This is going to suck. And it does. When our cars hit, I'm thrown forward. My head crashes through the windshield. My chin catches the steering wheel, and the entire bottom row of my teeth come flying out into my mouth. My legs come forward, and my right leg becomes embedded in the air conditioning unit down to the bone. And my left leg hits the emergency release brake. It knocks the handle off, but it skewers my left leg. It's all over in a second. And then shock descends upon me, and I feel no pain or fear. I climb out of the car, I'm sort of crumpled next to the car, and the woman in the Mercedes gets out, and she's completely unharmed until she sees me. And then she vomits and passes out. The first people to arrive at the scene, it's a pickup truck full of teenagers, and a kid about my age gets to me first, and he lies me down in the mud and the snow. He gives me a look over, and then he says, "Dude, you're fucked." It is the most accurate medical assessment that I will receive that day. A police officer arrives, he puts a coat on me, and I've got broken ribs, so it feels like 1,000 pounds. I'm looking up at a white sky, and the snow's falling, and I eventually close my eyes. When I woke up again, I'm in an ambulance. There's a woman straddling my hips, and she is pounding on my chest, which is now on fire. And there's a man trying to shove a tube down my throat, and the woman starts screaming, "He's back, he's back." And I'm wondering, who the hell is back? But it's me. I find out later that my heart stopped beating, and I stopped breathing for about a minute. No white light. When I get to the emergency room, the doctors get to work on me right away. They're picking out glass. They're getting my legs ready for surgery. They're wiring my teeth down. A nurse comes over and asks me for my phone number, and I give her my parents' number, and then I give her the number for McDonald's because I'm supposed to be working that night. And she sort of scoffs at it, but I say, no, like I was dead 20 minutes ago, but that drive-thru does not run well without me, and they're going to have to get someone in. And bless her heart, she calls McDonald's. My parents, they don't show up. I find out later that when they heard I was stable, they go to check the car out first. And I'm waiting for a surgeon because it's December 23rd and they're hard to find. And I'm waiting and I'm feeling alone. But I'm not alone because when I called McDonald's to tell them I was out, those people started calling other people. and the waiting room is now filling up with 16 and 17 and 18-year-old kids and one 14-year-old boy. And my friend Benji is the first one to arrive. And they can't come into the emergency room to see me because they're not family, but they roll my gurney to the other side of the emergency room and they open a door. And one by one, each one of my friends stands in the door and they wave and they give me the thumbs up and they say stupid things to make me laugh. Benji never gets his concert t-shirt and Coog never gets his comic books, and the beta fish is the only casualty of the car accident that day. But it turns out that Pat is wrong, because you can give your friends Christmas presents, because they give me the best one I've ever received. They give me family. And until I meet my wife 15 years later, they're the only family that I have. And it turns out they're the only family that I need. Thank you.
Jesus, man.
Yeah, guys,
What do you
that
think?
was the best told story. What the heck?
So in the book, he argues the story is only about that 5 seconds when they opened the doors and the friend started like saying hello, and he realizes he actually has a family and it's their friends, his friends. Everything
Mm.
else, the car accident, everything else, is just stakes for you to feel more connection to that 5 seconds in which he realizes he actually does have a family.
Mm. So
And
what's
that
the
is
tip?
what,
What's the tip like to find the point of the story and build suspense and stakes and all that kind of stuff around it?
so so he says for you to tell a story that actually people can connect to, you need to find change. You need to find a 5 second, he calls it like that, a 5 seconds moment. You need to find a 5 seconds moment in which suddenly something changed. You fell in love, you fell out of love, you changed your opinion about something, you realized about something, something changed in you. And then from those 5 second moments, build the stakes so other people can understand why that change is so important and why it makes sense. And then of course there are millions of details on different things, and there are millions of chapters on how to do these things. But essentially, if you don't have a 5 second moment, if you don't change throughout your story, then most probably people are going to forget about your story, and they may not connect in the way that people do with these kinds of stories.
Mm.
Wow.
Very cool. Just thinking about some of the stories I tell, I'm like, now I understand why people don't connect with it.
Me too. Same.
I'm like,
So
dude, that's such an amazing story. Why don't you connect with it? Like, yeah, nice one.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, and I've the same happened to me, and I started thinking, okay, what stories have I told in the past that have actually had like a lot of great impressions, and it makes sense because there were 5 second moments, um, and he literally put in the chapter 8, for example, finding your beginning, which is the chapter about how to start a story, and it's called Finding Your Beginning, parenthesis, I'm also about to forever ruin most movies and many books for you, because when you start learning about these things, you start realizing that all movies, all stories, or books, fiction books, just follow this. You have a character that was in some way at the beginning, then he had a climax in which he had a 5 second moment, and then he wasn't that way anymore.
Mm. You know,
And you can
I
see that in
yeah,
Star Wars, in Jurassic Park, in Disney movies, Pixar movies, right?
I I agree with him. I really like well thought out character plots. And that's why some movies I can't watch because like I'm like, this makes no sense for this character to think this way. He realized this. Why the fuck is he doing the same shit again? Like Spider Man. I'm like, one movie he realizes something, he's matured, he's changed. Next movie, dumbass kid again. I'm like, bro, like you've realized this. This doesn't make any sense. Like this story's broken. Yeah. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
I love I love how we us like I I've lived through life oscillating between you can't have rules for anything, but then you find out these random rules that apply to almost everything. Like you need to have 5 seconds to of change to attract the opinion of people. You get what I mean?
Mm.
Life is so random, but there are these kinds of like rules, like hacks, which is what a TikTok would say, like these top 10 hacks, life hacks, but they do exist, and it's based probably on like science or a lot of
Yeah.
experience from this guy, for example. I love it. Um,
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay.
Uh,
No, no, go, go.
um, I was in my, I was at work the other day, um, and I realized the exact moment in which I started believing that storytelling actually had a purpose. You see, that was my 5 seconds of change. Okay, here goes
Wow,
on.
man. Wow.
You
Why was
didn't
that
build the
day?
stakes.
You woke up, it was
Wait,
cold.
no, yeah, I think no, I was about to build the stakes now. So
No,
I
that's not
was,
how it works, man.
I was
Hansi, bro.
anyways, I was working on my computer, and then my colleague was also working on hers. We're discussing random work things, and our boss goes to us and says, "Hey, I just got this email. It's this guy that works for Disney, like Disney World. He just happens to be in the building. He's gonna be giving like a talk downstairs in the first floor. If you want to go, if not, here's the link. You can just go in." And where I work, it's what they call a service station. Do you also call it service station, Chavi? Where you go fuel up your gas for your car?
Yep.
Okay, so you start realizing like service station. Why are they called that way? Why aren't they called like gas station? It's because they've taken the chance of like you wanting to fill up fuel for your car to then like give you a whole service, and they offer you to clean your windshields, and you can go in,
Food and
buy food. Yeah, so it's special for a guy that works for Disney World, which is the place in which they pride themselves for being like the best service in the world, Disney World, um, to go and give a service talk. There was a talk about giving the best service, and he. I'm gonna skip to the end. Everything he says is incredibly
no,
interesting.
that's something you cannot do.
No, the end of the talk, the end of the talk he gave, which is the most
No,
like
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just throwing in things from the book.
love it. Because I actually don't have like I don't remember really well everything he said before, but I explicitly remember two things that happened when he was close to the end of the talk. He did two like activities, uh, two dynamics. What do you? He the first one was look. Everyone was a stranger in the room in the audience. I don't know if they were all strangers to each other, but they could have been anyone, and they told him to get into pairs, um, while making them laugh. Like, okay, don't fall in love or anything. But anyways, it was all part of his like his talk. Like he was very good service, like making them laugh, etc. And then he had made them look at each other. Like all the couples made them look at each other and then hug each other as if they hadn't seen each other for 10 years, and they were best friends at what point, and now they're finally like seeing each other again after 10 years of not seeing each other, and that got people like really emotional. They, that was basically the whole activity. They just hugged, they laughed, they met each other as if they had known each other and hadn't seen each other for 10 years. And I really think that he did that with, because in itself that activity showed didn't show anything, and I think that just try to like loosen up their heart with that activity. It's like different ways of storytelling. From what I think I learned from him is that that was one action he did to impose like emotions on his audience, and then the other one is following that activity he turned on Disney music, like the most cliche like Disney music, could have been from any movie, just really beautiful, like strings all along.
Yeah.
And he starts also narrating the most cliche plot ever. Like he told everyone in the audience to close their eyes, to imagine that they were in their childhood house, and they were like without shoes in their socks, and they go running out of their room, and they find out that like their grandpa is like making coffee, and then their your sister, he starts like narrating this whole story while everyone's with Disney music in the background, everyone with their eyes shut. Your sister passes along, the kettle's ready, you get your hot chocolate ready, your mom's watching TV on the couch. And he keeps going, like just keeps describing a scene, and then everyone's crying, bro. In the audience, people start crying like a lot while he just
Why?
described the most, because it was like the Disney song, and the nostalgia. Come on, Chai. The Disney music, the nostalgia that he provoked.
Oh,
Um, like you could see from two perspectives. Like, wow, because I was seeing it from a screen 20 floors above what was happening, and I was like, wow, people are so malleable. People are so like subjective to 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 be spoon fed
mm,
whatever you say to them, and people can mess with your mind because everything you did was just say a generic like story and play some random music, and they're crying, make feeling a lot of emotions. But that's because I saw it behind a screen, I think. Because if I was there, I would have probably been crying as well.
So what was your realization?
Like I saw it as another like type of storytelling in which it's not about you giving a lot of importance to 5 seconds of change, but instead like provoking a lot of emotion in someone else without them realizing. And in this case, it was because of their trademark Disney music, which is like already, I think, wired into our
man.
brains to make us feel.
On the weekend, we went to this like I went to this these really cool cafes, like next to a really cool building with like beautiful gardens, and just sat there and played Disney music. I played the soundtrack to Nemo. Just like it was a 5 hour soundtrack. And it was the best thing ever. Like sitting there for an hour listening to Nemo watching the sunset was just like, oh my God. It was
Wow,
unreal. Yeah, so he
that's
just reminded me of that.
that's so random, but so cool.
Dude, it was so good. Like the Nemo soundtrack backtrack is one of the best backtracks to a movie of all time. Sorry.
I would love, I would
Play
love to
it.
have a discussion on that.
Just play the Nemo soundtrack specifically. It's
I,
so like
would,
it's just so like it's like it makes you feel so many cool emotions that music typically doesn't make you feel. Like it's all
wow.
about wonder and
Okay.
exploration and all that kind of stuff. It's fucking awesome.
Wow.
Listen to
To close today,
it.
I have Matthew's Dick view on why storytelling isn't a bad thing. He
Yeah.
says, I teach attorneys, salespeople, and business leaders who want to improve their presentation skills, sales speech, and branding. I teach novelists, essayists, and screenwriters, television writers, poets, archivists, and other creative sorts who want to refine their understanding of story. I teach professors, school teachers, minister priests, and rabbis who want to improve their lectures and sermons and hold the attention of their audiences. I teach storytelling to people who want to improve their dating skills. I teach people who want to become more interesting at the dinner table. I teach grandfathers who want their grandchildren to finally listen to them. I teach students who want to tell better stories on their college applications. I teach job applicants who are looking to improve their interview skills. I teach people who want to learn more about themselves.
It's true. Very
Love
useful.
it. I agree with all of that. Like, I get why he has to say that though, because people may find it unnatural to trying to build the best story, because why can't you be just interesting by yourself? Like, I think people might react
No, but it
that
was
way.
also I don't know.
Some people are, but
sometimes
As
storytelling
most
like it's
skills, you need
really
to train
good.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no,
But
but
it does
sometimes
kind
like
of
his
kind
story
of
is so
feel
manufactured
unnatural
as
to
well.
train that.
Like he wasn't
I
just
feel.
saying that off rip. Like he's thought
But it
about it
just
and
Yeah.
he's made funny elements and he's exaggerating shit. It is a bit unnatural. So what the fuck was
I don't think
that?
it was unnatural. I think he just told it in an unnatural manner. But I don't think, for example, he exaggerated anything. I think that
No,
actually
I
happened.
think the
Everything that he
opposite.
said
I think
actually
he told
happened.
it in a natural manner, but it was very unnatural. Like it was very manufactured.
That's
That
not what
felt
he
good.
says, at least. So
Right.
there's actually a chapter. I haven't got to it yet, but it's called um, the five permissible lies of true storytelling. But I haven't got into it, so
wow.
maybe next week I can tell you about it.
Wow. 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 I have a lot. I've had a lot of friends that tell the most amazing stories, and I feel like they lie about half of it. But people listen and they're so funny. I've never thought what I've never. I don't know what to think about that. Anyways, let me know what it says.
I'll tell you next week. Okay, boys, it's been a pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you, Martin,
So
for
much fun.
making the time.
Thank you, guys. I'll see you next week.
See
Thanks,
you.
boys.